What happens when a successful CEO who built his empire from the ground up decides to shop at his own store incognito? What unfolds when this powerful man, surrounded by wealth and success, learns something that changes everything he thought he knew about his business? Let's dive in and see what happens when a man's world is turned upside down in the most unexpected of ways. It was a crisp Saturday morning in the quiet town of Millwood. The sun was just beginning to rise, casting a warm golden hue across the streets. Inside a high-rise building, 45-year-old Greg Simmons, the CEO of a fast-growing retail chain called Simmons Goods, sat at his desk, glancing through reports of the latest quarter. He was a man accustomed to success, and his company had boomed over the last decade. Greg wasn't your typical CEO. He wasn't an arrogant man, but the pressure of running a multi-million-dollar company made him focus on results rather than relationships. Most of his employees had never even seen him in person. He was always in meetings, in the office, or traveling. He was so caught up in the corporate world that he had begun to lose touch with the very foundation of his success, the people working for him at the ground level. One day, as Greg sat in his lavish office, a strange thought crossed his mind. What's it really like in the stores? How do my employees feel about the business? Do they really care about the customers? What do they say when I'm not around? He wanted to know the truth, not the version fed to him by his managers or the numbers on a spreadsheet. Greg decided to visit one of his stores, but he wouldn't go as the CEO. He would go in disguise, blend in with the customers, and experience it firsthand. The next morning, Greg stood in front of his mirror, his reflection showing a man who seemed lost in thought. He removed his suit jacket, replaced his polished shoes with worn sneakers, and put on a plain cap. His eyes were hidden under the brim, and his face was barely recognizable to anyone who might know him. He made the decision to visit the Millwood branch of Simmons Goods, the first store he had opened all those years ago. He walked into the store, blending in with the small crowd of people browsing through the aisles. He could feel the buzz of energy as employees moved around, stocking shelves and assisting customers. For a moment, Greg felt like an ordinary person, just another shopper looking for a good deal. But his mind was racing. This wasn't about buying anything, it was about uncovering the truth. He wandered the store aimlessly, watching the workers interact with the customers. He was surprised by how friendly they seemed, how enthusiastic they were about their jobs. But it wasn't until he approached the register that things took a turn. There, standing behind the counter, was a young man named Jake. He couldn't have been older than 22, and he had the kind of energy that filled the room. He greeted every customer with a warm smile and seemed to genuinely enjoy his work. But as Greg stood in line, he overheard something that stopped him in his tracks. "Hey, did you hear? The CEO of this place doesn't even know what's going on in his own stores," Jake said to his coworker. "He's too busy with his meetings and his fancy office. I bet he doesn't even care about us." Greg froze. His heart sank in his chest. This was the kind of thing he had feared but never expected to hear. Was this how his employees really felt? That he didn't care? That he was too removed from the real work? The words stung more than he could have imagined. He had spent years building this company, pouring his heart and soul into every decision. Yet here was a young employee who didn't even know who Greg really was, criticizing him openly. As the line moved forward, Greg approached the counter. Jake looked up, his eyes widening in surprise. Can I help you with anything?" Jake asked, his voice a bit shaky now, as if he realized he might be talking to someone important. Greg smiled, trying to keep his voice calm. "Yeah, I'm just looking around. How's everything going here today?" Jake looked relieved, his nervousness fading slightly. "It's good, sir. Busy day. You know, people love the new sale we're having." Greg nodded, trying to keep the conversation going. He was desperate to understand more about this young man, about the people working in his store. "That's great to hear. You've been working here long?" "About 6 months," Jake replied, his smile returning. "It's not always easy, but I really enjoy it. The team here is great, and the customers, well, they're mostly friendly. Sometimes, though, we get those who are just hard to please. but that's part of the job. Greg felt a strange warmth as Jake spoke, the sincerity in his voice evident. It made Greg feel even more conflicted about what he had overheard earlier. Jake was clearly passionate about his job, but was he right? Was Greg too far removed from his employees to understand the struggles they faced? As Greg prepared to leave, he couldn't shake the feeling that something needed to change. The words that Jake had spoken kept echoing in his mind. He didn't want to be the CEO who had no idea what was going on with his team. He didn't want to be the man who was so caught up in the corporate world that he had lost touch with the people who made his business successful. Just as he was about to walk out, he turned to Jake one last time. "Jake," he said, his voice softer now, "I want to thank you for your hard work. You and the team are doing great things here, and don't worry, I'll make sure to stay more connected with all of you from now on." Jake blinked, a bit surprised by Greg's words. "Thanks, sir. That means a lot." Greg smiled, nodding as he walked out of the store, his heart full of mixed emotions. He had come in hoping to get some answers, but what he had learned was far more valuable than anything he could have imagined. He had learned that the real heartbeat of his company wasn't in the boardroom or on the sales sheets. It was in the people like Jake, the employees who cared deeply about their work, who made his business thrive every single day. From that day on, Greg made a commitment to visit his stores more frequently, not as the CEO, but as a man who cared about the people who helped him build his empire. He would never forget the lesson he learned that day, the lesson that true success wasn't just about numbers, but about the connections he made with the people who supported him from the very beginning. Sometimes the most powerful revelations come when you least expect them. Greg Simmons had learned that the truth about his business wasn't in the profit margins or quarterly reports. It was in the genuine hearts of the people working behind the scenes. And for the first time in a long while, he felt truly connected to his company once more. Moral of the story: success isn't just about the numbers. It's about the people who make the journey worthwhile. Never lose sight of the ones who help you grow. That's the story, friends. I hope you enjoyed it. It was a pleasure sharing it with you all. Don't forget to comment below and let me know where you're watching from. It's always fun to see the global reach of these stories. And if you haven't already, please hit that subscribe button for more amazing stories, tips, and tricks. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye. If you'd like to show some extra love, tap the 3 dots near the share button and send a super thanks.